Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the only thing that now is between you and the dinner with a stranger today. So I hope we'll use this time pretty well. So first of all, I would like to know to who I'm talking to right now. So how many of you are developers? Some kind of developers, testers? Okay, some kind of managers? Okay, some kind of scrum masters, agile coaches. Okay, the same people as managers, good. Any decision makers, C-level? Okay, I could sell you something later. I'm kidding. Today I just want to share with you only 3 stories. I don't want to talk about some theories, even if there will be a theory of constraints presented, but I want to share with you 3 stories from my previous experience in the last few years where I applied theory of constraint to solve the problems that my clients had. So the first story, the 3 stories. The first story, I call it the water scrum fail story, or scrum fail story, or W agile. You can read it as wagile, not we agile, but wagile. Wagile. So, I've been hired by one company as a consultant to help with a team of developers. The manager who hired me, he said that there is a problem with the development team because they are not as efficient as they should be, in his opinion. So yeah, they were extreme developers. When I came there, I found that, okay, maybe there is a problem with these people in the team or somewhere, but maybe, because I'm a system guy or system thinking guy, I said maybe there is a problem in the system around these developers. What I found was that it wasn't the only team in the organization that was working on this product. There were actually 3 teams of developers working on the product, each of them about 5 to 7 people in the team. They were only programmers. Of course, there is some product backlog. Yeah. Every few weeks, those teams had something that they called sprint planning. And during the sprint planning, they choose how much to take to the sprint or which features they will be working on, which functionalities. It should work, yeah? One way or another. The problem was that it wasn't the end of the process. Those were just the programmers, not the testers. Beside of them, there was a team, separated team of software testers. You know, maybe some of you are working for a corporate. How many of you are working for a corporate, for a big business? In a big companies, there are different, sometimes ridiculous policies, like separated department of the testers and separate department of the developers, or front-end developers, back-end developers. That was this case. You know, it's pretty hard to implement Scrum in this situation. I haven't seen some software testers Scrum's team. Software testers Scrum team. Whatever. And it occurs that when the developers finish their assignment or they finish some feature that they have been working on, they deliver it they throw it through the wall, to software testers who have been testing this. And at the end, when they test it, it goes to production, someone releases it. The releasing process was pretty simple, pretty easy, so it wasn't the case. So what I found later was that in average, one single task in average or one single feature spends in the development 3 weeks. In testing, it spends 1 week in average. So what could we think about it? That in average, every single task and every single feature should spend in the process, in the entire process, around 4 weeks. What do you think? Is it true? No? Some of them could go back, yeah, sure. Let's assume that we count only tasks that didn't go back. They are also waiting. There is a queue here, yeah? Like this queue was building pretty long. Why? Because there were like 15 or to 20, up to 20 developers and only, I think, 3 testers. Oops. So this line, this queue here grows pretty fast. It was pretty long. From the sprint to the sprint was even longer after every sprint. I don't know. But the funny part was what I found that the average, I took this data from the management tool that name starts by Jay. I don't want to name it. I took the data from there and accused that the actual average time of the average lead time for a single feature was around 9 weeks. It's not so bad. Yeah, 9 weeks, even if the thing's standing in line. But you know what? I start thinking about, okay, but 9 weeks, is it good or not? It's not. It could be worse, yeah? But what I found was that many of the features have a lead time around 20 weeks, 24, 25 weeks. The longest duration time for one feature was 36 weeks. Yeah, so single thing was delivered after they started working on it, and it got to production after 36 weeks. It wasn't something really big. It was a small feature. The features there were pretty good decomposed. So how come it was only 9 weeks in average? There was one person, Uber product owner. Actually, was the CEO of the company who came one after another to the team and asked, "Oh, remember this feature I gave you 1 week ago? Where is it? Why it's not on production yet?" And you know, that moment magic happened. 2-3 days later, this feature was on production. I don't know how does it happen. It was magic. Sometimes, you know, I think this guy was pretty magician, but yeah, it was possible in this team to deliver something in less than a week. So why, in average, it was 9 weeks for one feature? Something wrong. So of course, yeah, there were only 3 testers. So of course we have a bottleneck there. But how to deal with it? What would you do in such a situation?
Move testers to teams.
Okay, would it solve it? Okay, we could think about it, yeah? Would it solve the problem? Hired more testers. We don't have money.
Rethink the testing process or quality assurance process.
Rethink the testing process. Okay. Yeah, and how would it change it?
Move developer to testing.
Move developer to testing. Yeah. Have you ever tried it? This is really nice idea. I've seen it a few times where, you know, the first idea was that, okay, we don't have enough testers and we have too many developers. We can fire developers, or you can ask them to start testing. And what do you think happened when you ask the developer to start testing?
It's like firing them.
It's like firing them. There's later, yeah, just you delay it in time. Automate. No, there is no time for test automation. You know, people were very busy. Yeah, they have so many tasks to do. Deadlines. Yeah, it was impossible to automate tests. They were so busy. Stop testing. Problem was that it was a very complex platform that processed a lot of transactions and money, so it wasn't the best idea. Yeah, it will be a little bit more costly. Well, what I actually did, it's called drum buffer rope. It's the method that you can find in the book by Eliyahu Goldratt called The Goal. It's about the theory of constraints, and the Goldratt is the guy who designed the theory, figure out the theory of constraints. What we did, we create a drum. So we move the testers at the beginning of the process. And when we start the planning, instead of starting the planning from the development team, who said before, the development team said, okay, we could take as much feature as we can, yeah, so it would be, I don't know, 10 per team. But we started with the testers, asking them how many features they could test in this 3 weeks long iteration. Of course, it was much less than the developers could provide. But what was important is that if something cannot go through testing, it cannot go to production. So there is no value of creating something that will not go into production. Yeah, so we said, okay, in the worst case scenario, we will deliver as much as we used to deliver before in a period of time of 3 weeks. But at least we'll have some transparency and we'll generate something which was pretty more important, because as you can probably imagine, the teams, the development teams, programmers, they were not so busy as they used to be before because they have a lot of slack time. Yeah, but now the question arises, what should we do with this slack time? Yeah. Should we fire developers? Have you ever heard from your developers, your colleagues, that there is no time for quality? there is no time for test automation. There is no time for refactoring. There is no time for whatever, trainings. Yeah? Everyone heard it. In every organization, we had the same problems. Actually, in this situation, we gave developers a lot of time for refactoring, a lot of time for quality improvements. And they did it. You know, they start working on it. But what is more important, we start asking testers why the testing takes so much time. And we find that there is a lot of problems. Like we found that one of the problems was okay, of course, test automation. Test automation would help them, but they don't have time for doing test automation. They do not have proper testing environment. It works pretty slow. It's not the same as production, so they need to verify things twice and this kind of stuff. They do not have appropriate data for testing, so they need to prepare data each time they have to test something new. They waste a lot of time. The very important part, what I found was that the testers was assigned as the fourth line of support. So beside of testing, usually they spend about 1 hour per day on answering the calls from a clients, very frustrated clients, yeah, and explain them why the system doesn't work or how to do the workaround or figuring out how to do the workaround in the system to do something. You may think it was ridiculous, yeah, but when you don't see this big picture, when you don't see that your testers are bottleneck or the constraints in your system, then you make this kind of decision, yeah. We did, of course, the first decision we made was that developers will become this fourth line of support, and developers also start working on test automation, on test environments, on continuous delivery, continuous deployment, on preparing automated test data generation, this kind of stuff. After 3 iterations, the capacity of testers and the capacity of our team, or the throughput of our team, of our entire organization, grows 3 times. It's only 9 weeks. We need only 9 weeks to speed up 3 times. Later, they speed up even more until they found another constraints in the system and found another problems. But it was pretty good example how the theory of constraint could be used to solve it. It's not about working hard. They used to be really busy. I even could tell you that about half of the developers, of the programmers, have been paid for the working over hours. Like they had about 10% of their salary from the working over hours. So they were so busy, even if they didn't have to be busy at all. They had a lot of slack time later on. It was this kind of problem. The second story I would like to tell you is about estimates versus reality. Everyone been there. Once upon a time, there was a business guy who came to the developer. Do not ask me why he came directly to the developer, not the product owner or manager or whatever, but he came to the developer and he asked, okay, I have this feature. How much would it take, how long it will take to do this, to finish this feature? And the developer, according to his best knowledge, he didn't lie, he just answered, oh, it will take around 6 hours. Yeah? Okay, what do you think? What was the status of this feature after 6 hours?
Ready for it.
It wasn't even started, of course. What do you think? What was the lead time? When this feature was delivered? 6 weeks later. I'm mentioning it because there was a huge shitstorm around it because this guy this business person who asked it, she was the marketing director or something like this, and she was a very important person in the board, in the company board. She came to the team, she asked about this, and then she came to the CEO after 4 weeks or something, and she asked, where is this feature? Why they are so lazy? They said it took only 6 hours, it's forthwith, and it's not finished yet. Yeah, so there was the problem with it. Okay. Of course, when someone asks you how long will it take to finish this, what they actually mean is when it will be ready, when it will be on production, when it will be delivered. This is the miscommunication that happened there. But beside of the miscommunication, there were a problem, there were an issue. This is a burnout chart of the team that I'm talking about, the sprint burnout chart. Could you tell me what's wrong with this burnout chart? Do you see if there is something wrong?
The story was added.
Story was added. Okay. It grows, yeah. Is there anything wrong? Yeah, the red line is the line that, the ideal, the flat things here are the weekends, yeah. As you can see, it's March 2015, a long time ago. Any ideas? Okay, I will give you some more data. That was a team of nine programmers, 2 testers. This is how their definition of done looks like. And those are hours. We have 11 people, 2 weeks long iteration, 108 hours planned, and 108 hours barely burned during the 2 weeks long iteration. It means that each person in this team actually burned or worked only 10 hours during the 2 weeks long iteration, so it's 1 hour per day. Lazy bastards. Yeah? They probably drink coffee all the day, play PlayStation, or working on some side project, yeah? And hackathons, all this stuff. Well, no. They were really busy all the time. There were a few problems in this team. One of the problems they have that, according to this definition of done, the code review may be done by senior developer. What I found after quick discussion with them was that there was only one senior developer in the team. And he was working half-time. And it doesn't mean that there were no really good experienced guys in the team, but the problem was that those guys who were in this team, they didn't have the domain knowledge, they didn't know how the system works in the context that they had been working on. And it wasn't a new team. This team worked together for half a year almost until I came there. And they still have only one person who were able to do the code review. Why do you think, why? What do you think why?
They weren't involved in the design or the
Well,
requirement analysis? Lack of trust.
they were like lack of trust. They weren't involved in anything because this guy, yeah, they were just programming, coding monkey. And it wasn't even the fault of this guy because he was so busy with doing code review that he hadn't any time to teach others. Yeah, it was like, sorry, I don't have time to tell you how to do this better. I'm just doing code review. I'm just putting the comments in the code in the in the GitLab or whatever that you are doing. You need to fix this and this and that and that. And I will not tell you why because I have a queue of 20 code reviews to do today. Yeah, and I don't have time because I'm working only half time. It's ridiculous. Yeah. The simple solution was that okay, whatever happened will happen. Everyone could do a code review. Everyone could do the merge request, merge the code. Just 2 person, whoever it is in the team, need to review the code and think about it. After 1 month, it occurs that people start learning from each other. This guy, the single developer, gained more time to react in a serious things that there were like very important things that he reviewed it. And when he did the spare review with other people, he also started teaching these people why it's so important and showed them the bigger picture, the context. It occurs that this team, after a few months, I think it was 3 months or something, their productivity was almost 6 or 7 times bigger, or effectiveness capacity was bigger than it used to be at the moment in March when I started working with them. And I started working with them few sprints before. It was the first iteration ever this team delivered everything what they planned. Yeah, the first problem which we have was that we didn't know what our capacity is because every sprint was like everything is started. We have something that came from the sprint before in some stadium and we don't know where we are. We don't know how much we did in the sprint, how much we finished things from the previous sprint. So it was chaos. So first thing I did there was that I need to provide some transparency to see what the throughput is, what the capacity is, and then work on the constraints that we had. Okay, in these 2 stories, I already show you at least 3 examples of constraints, or 3 types of constraints. One was the people constraints. Yeah, like we don't have enough testers. What could we do with this? Of course, we could, ask developers to do this, yeah, to do testing or hire more testers. well, we don't have money for that. We need to figure out how to do this better, how to redesign our process in this way. Competency constraints. In the second story, there was only one senior developer. So someone told me recently that he had a similar situation, and someone told him that, oh, and we have only one senior developer, and this guy said that, I hope that he's not busy at all. Yeah? Because this is very important, that senior developers shouldn't code in the project. I had the similar situation in a different team, when we also had one single senior developer for a long time, and I asked this guy, okay, you cannot take any single task on yourself in a sprint. He said that way the productivity of the team will be cut in half. It was true. In the first sprint, the team delivered half of the average velocity from the previous iteration. But in the next sprint, they deliver almost the same number of features than before with this guy coding. In the next sprints, they started delivering more and more and more, because every single, and it was a team of one very senior guy, let's say one average regular developer, and 4 junior developers. They started learning so fast because this guy was only thing what he was doing, he was pair programming with others, he was just consulting things and teaching them all the time without coding himself, without committing himself any single line of code. He was just teaching people. He even was prohibited to touch the keyboard. Yeah? He was only consulting. He cannot code, even on someone else's keyboard. And the third constraints that I always looking for, because they are actually usually easiest to change, are policy constraints. Like in this first case, of course, we could solve this problem by merging or maybe not solve, but optimize this constraint that we have with the testers to join the testers to the development team and build a cross-functional team. This is why Scrum works sometimes. This is one of the reasons, not always, that Scrum works. But in this case, it was pretty hard. We need to give something to the business, like increase the efficiency, so we could make some decision of policy changes. And in this second situation I described to you, the second story, the team itself created a policy, because the definition of done was created by the team itself. They created a policy that was just slowing them down. Yeah? So changing this policy was the easiest way we could do to exploit the constraint. And there is a pattern. First thing I've always did was the identifying constraint. The second one was to decide how to exploit the constraint. The third is subordinate everything to this decision. Yeah? Like in this first case, when we have this constraint on the testers, we subordinated all the process to the testers. They decided how much they could test during the process. That way we gain some capacity to elevate the system constraint, to work actually on the problem that caused that the testers are so slow. And of course, after some time, usually when you do this first 4 steps, you will find that there is another constraint in your system. And you need to do the same, you need to do the same over and over again. Okay, and the last story, last but not least, I would like to share with you, is a story about the system utilization. And there will be some theory. With something like Little law. The Little law says that the long-term average number of items in a stable system equals to the long-term average effective arrival rate multiplied by the average time an item spends in the system. It's the equation like this. From this equation, we actually could count what the optimal WIP limit is if we assume that our system needs to be utilized in 100%. You can count this optimal WIP limit by multiplying throughput rate times lead time. But the problem that I see with it is that usually organizations are aiming for this 100% utilization or resource utilization. It's like old school management, which is pretty hard to change. Yeah, like when you have the factory and you have automatized entire process and you have machines there, it's pretty good to aim for 100% system utilization, 100% utilization of each machine. The truth is that even this management was wrong for many years. I think that the first guys, of course, was from Toyota. They found that the only thing you need to utilize in 100% is the constraint you have, the bottleneck you have. It always should be utilized in 100%. It always should work. You even need to build some inventory in the front of this, so it will never stop. It will be all the time utilized. But everything else, who cares? Yeah. Until you exploit this, elevate this constraint, they don't have to work. Then they do not have to be utilized. You will be only generating inventory. The problem with it is also that it assumes that the system is stable. It means that the arrival rate is the same as the rate that the things are leaving the system. Actually, especially in the creative work, like in IT, and in very complex environment, it usually doesn't happen at all. We are working in a very unstable environment, in a very unstable system. So utilization in 100% may be problematic. So I will give you an example. How the highway utilized in 100% looks like? How is it? It's like a traffic jam. Eh? Would you like to be there? No. Yeah. So this is how does it look like? Do you know this road sign probably? Yeah. You've seen it. What do you think? What is the maximum speed you can drive through this road narrowing? You know, I mean maximum, of course, you can as much as again, yeah, but maximum safety speed. Yeah. What do you think?
Same as before.
How much?
Same as before.
Same. 42. You have to, if there is, what? Yeah, but if there is someone, if there is like regular traffic in the city. That way you will cause the accident or just traffic jam. Yeah. You know, the problem is that usually when we are trying to do this, we have a problem because we need to fit between the cars that are going on the left side. Yeah, we need to fit between them. Usually we cannot do this. Why? Because most of the drivers are dumb, yeah, and they drive just after the car in front of them without any slack between them, without any space between. Like even they will not allow you to get there, yeah, because they are dumb. But if we keep the distance after the car in front of us, and there is even a rule for it, it's a rule of thumb, but in some cases, in some countries, this rule is even described in a law that it's called a 2 seconds rule. And it says that drivers should keep a distance greater than half of the speed in the meters. So if you drive with a speed of, I don't know, 50 kilometers per hour, you should keep the distance at least 25 meters after the car in front of you. If you drive 100 kilometers per hour, you should be at least 50 meters behind the car in front of you. If you keep this distance, then it doesn't matter what speed you drive, you can get through this narrowing of the road smoothly. Everyone could do this. Yeah, but we just need to generate this slack time. The same with the traffic lights and the crossroads. Yeah. Do you know that the crossroads usually are designed with a capacity that is actually 2 times bigger than the actual capacity measured when people actually use the crossroad? So 2 times more cars could drive through one light changes, but we cannot do this because we are dumb. Yeah? It's counterintuitive. It's like when lights changes to green, and we stand just next to the car in front of us without any slack, without any distance there, we need to wait until this car will move. When they are moving, then we could start. What would be much more efficient would be if we'll start simultaneously. Yeah? That way, the more car could drive through the one light change. Of course, we cannot do this because we are standing just after the car. So what's the proper distance when you're standing there? You cannot see this in this picture. I just needed some picture. It's like the proper distance behind the car in front of you is the distance when you're sitting behind the wheel. You can see the tires when they are touching the asphalt. Then you are in proper distance. That way you can move, you can start moving simultaneously with this car in the front of you. You can even start moving simultaneously with the car in the front of a car in the front of you. Yeah? It's like everyone could move smoothly and simultaneously, and that way more cars could get through the crossroad, and that way we will not have as many traffic jams as we usually have here in Krakow. You know, this private stuff, yeah, I just like to drive to the city, and if you will use it, it will be better for everyone. So, you know, it's like, that's what I said, everything what I said is like, okay, maybe you get it, yeah, it's okay, it's true, of course, but why no one is doing it? Did you enjoy to standing in a line for a food today? In a queue? No?
Depends on the company.
Yeah. Maybe it was fun to talk with others. Yeah, I remember the situation from one conference when I was speaking about theory of constraints, and I was speaking about queuing theory and this cars and this kind of stuff. And there was the huge line for this, and I said, okay, it would be faster if we'll keep the slack time. So we talked with a few people, and we said, okay, so we will do this, that I will not enter into the system until the guy in front of me will be in the second, like there was line, the few plates with meat and other stuff. So until the guy will be in the second place. Yeah, because when we are there, everyone is like trying to squeeze there something, and we did interrupt each other. It takes more time for all of us to take a food. So we decided that we will just, you know, we'll wait here and until the guy took some vegetables, and when he's cooking the meat, okay, and when he's leaving the plate, I'm going into the system. We tried to do this experiment. One guy was measuring things, and what happened was like, there was one other guy who just standing like 2 meters tall, this kind. He was just standing like 5 people behind us. He was just, are you going out to eat or what are you doing? I just learned at that moment that you can do experiments in a queuing theory, but not when people are hungry. It's dangerous. So, but you know, for us it was obvious that that way the system will work more smoothly, it will be more efficient. But even if it was obvious, it's not intuitive. It's even counterintuitive for people to work that way. It's counterintuitive for people to take less to the sprint. And how does it apply to the Scrum? You know the concept of a velocity, yeah? Like we have some velocity, some capacity of a team measured in story points, hours, whatever. And usually what teams do, they try to, like if our velocity is 40, we take as much stories as we could to fulfill our capacity to up to 40 or 42. Why not? Yeah, this time will be better. Actually, sometimes that worked to some point, to some extent. But what usually happens, and what should happen according to the math there, is that at the end, after a few iterations like this, the team starting finishing less and less and less. I've tried a few times with many different teams, and actually it happened always that when team was trying to fulfill the capacity, after a few iterations, when there was like one fluctuation of the system that something goes wrong, they have more inventory, like legacy from the previous system that was hard to estimate how much time they need to finish it, and this kind of stuff. It occurs that from iteration to iteration, they took less and less and less until they usually end up somewhere around 60% of their regular capacity of finished things that in the sprint. So the good idea is to always take less than, let's say, 80% of, it's a rule of thumb, yeah? 80% of your average capacity. If you will finish before the time, you will just take something more. But this buffer will keep you safe and will give you some opportunities to do. You can always do like, oh, there is a refactoring we could do and there is not enough time to take another feature. Okay, let's do the refactoring. Or there are a few minor bugs in the backlog that we never have time to fix. Yeah? Well, maybe it's a good time to do this. Yeah? It's just a few minutes of work. Of course, your boss will never let you do this. How come to take less features to the sprint? We need to be busy all the time. We need to be working all the time. We need to take as much as possible. The problem is that you have to ask the boss or your manager or whoever tell you like this, or even your team members, if they want to take as much as possible to the sprint, or maybe they want to finish as much as possible in the sprint. It's not obvious, it's counterintuitive, but believe me or not, it works. Okay, thank you very much.